Have you ever felt a hunger that no food could satisfy? A craving that gnaws not at your stomach but at your very soul? Tonight we pull back the curtain on a story whispered only in the darkest corners of forgotten libraries, a tale of a banquet unlike any other, the Feast of Shadows. This isn't a story about grand castles or noble kings. It begins in a small, isolated town nestled deep within a valley perpetually shrouded in mist. The townsfolk were simple, their lives governed by the seasons. But once a year, as the autumn moon reached its fullest and most spectral glow, they would prepare for the feast. No one remembered how it started. The tradition was older than the oldest tree woven into the very fabric of the town's existence. Outsiders were never welcome, and those who stumbled upon the preparations were quietly and permanently turned away. The invitations were not written on paper but felt in the heart, a subtle, irresistible pull towards the town square as twilight bled into night. Long trestle tables would be arranged in a circle, draped in cloths, the color of dried blood and deep twilight. But the platters and bowls held no roasted meats, no hearty stews, no colorful vegetables. The feast was one of intangibles, of things stolen and sacrificed. Imagine this: a large, ornate silver platter sits at the center of the head table. On it, shimmering like a heat haze, is a single perfect memory. It's the memory of a child's first laugh, stolen from a young mother just that morning. She wouldn't remember the sound, only a vague, hollow ache where joy once resided. The elders of the town, their faces masks of solemn concentration, would raise their empty forks and knives, and with a shared, silent act of will, they would carve a piece of that memory. As they partook, their own dull, faded memories would sharpen. A fleeting echo of happiness warming their cold bones. This was the appetizer. The next course might be a terrine filled with wasted potential. It would swirl like a thick, dark soup, smelling of old books and dusty attics. This was gathered from the town's dreamers, the painter who never picked up a brush, the poet whose verses remained locked in his mind. The townspeople would ladle this into their bowls, and for a moment they'd feel a surge of ambition, a flash of creative genius that wasn't theirs. They'd feel the ghost of a masterpiece, the shadow of a life unlived. But the feeling would pass, leaving them emptier than before. They would dine on platters of broken promises, which tasted bitter and metallic like old coins. They'd sip from goblets filled with unspoken words, a liquid that felt thick and heavy on the tongue, tasting of regret. Each dish was a stolen piece of someone else's life, a fragment of their soul. But who or what were they feeding? You see, the townspeople were merely the conduits. They were the plates and cutlery. The true guest of honor was unseen, a presence that hung in the air, heavy and ancient. With every bite the townsfolk took, this entity grew stronger. It fed on the essence of their consumption, on the emotional residue of the stolen concepts, the memory of joy, the potential, the regret. These were its sustenance. In exchange, the entity kept the town safe. The crops never failed, disease never took hold, and the harsh winters were always survivable. The town was a bubble preserved in time at the cost of its own soul. The main course was always the most harrowing. It was a dish of lingering hope. This was the most difficult to procure and the most potent. It was harvested from those who still dared to dream of a world beyond the misty valley, a young man who longed for adventure, a woman who yearned for a lost love to return. Their hope was a beacon bright and pure. During the feast, this hope would be presented, glowing faintly on an obsidian plate. As the townspeople consumed it, a wave of profound peace and contentment would wash over them. All their anxieties, their quiet desperations would vanish. They would feel perfectly happy in their gilded cage. The young man would forget his dreams of the sea. The woman would cease to wait by the window. They would accept their lot, their spirits finally broken and assimilated. The entity gorged itself on this. Hope was its most exquisite delicacy. As the feast drew to a close, with the first hint of dawn threatening the eastern sky, the dessert would be served. It was simple, shared secrets. Whispers would float above the tables, secrets plucked from the minds of everyone present. A hidden jealousy, a secret act of kindness, a long-buried shame. They would all taste each other's hidden lives, creating an unbreakable, if uncomfortable, bond of forced intimacy. It ensured no one would ever leave. They all knew too much. As the sun finally broke through the mist, the tables would be cleared, the platters now empty would be stored away, the townsfolk would return to their homes, feeling strangely full yet utterly hollow. The mother would go about her day, a phantom sadness clinging to her. The dreamer would pick up his tools for his mundane job, the thought of a paintbrush a foreign concept. They had survived another year, the entity was satisfied, but legends say that sometimes a child is born with an appetite that the Feast of Shadows cannot tame, a child who starves at the banquet, who finds the taste of stolen dreams to be ash in their mouth. They are born with a hunger for something real. And it is one of these children, they say, who will one day stand up from the table, knock over their goblet of unspoken words, and decide to starve the great unseen guest. They will choose to face the real world with all its dangers and uncertainties rather than eat another bite at the Feast of Shadows. And on that day, the town will either crumble to dust or, for the first time, truly begin to live. The story is a chilling reminder to cherish our own experiences, our joys, our regrets, our hopes. They are the nourishment for our own souls. Don't let anyone or anything steal them for their own feast. Thank you so much for joining me on this dark journey tonight. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button and subscribe. For more tales from the shadows, stay curious and guard your memories well.